Due process is critical. It's actually one of the most American fundamental rights that we have, which means that everybody is treated fairly by the system, has the same rights in the system, has the right, for example, to a lawyer, to have a trial, to be arrested upon probable cause. You read in the newspapers in other countries, for example, there might be a dictator that just goes and rounds people up and arrests them for whatever reason. Maybe it's what religion they are. Maybe it's what color their skin happens to be. In America, you have to have due process. You have rights. You have to be found, there has to have probable cause to believe that you've committed a crime to be arrested. You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, for example, that somebody committed that crime to then be sentenced to jail. And those are rights that are fundamental in our criminal justice system that have been there since the Constitution, and in fact are rooted in the Constitution, that every American citizen enjoys. The three most important roles for a prosecutor is not what many people think, which is to get a conviction. But a prosecutor, number one, is supposed to do the right thing for the right reasons in each and every case. And that may mean that this person's going to go free even though they committed the crime because they were arrested improperly, or there was something else wrong with their trial, or the witness changed his or her story, and now your evidence is different than it used to be. So that's the most important thing. The second is to hold somebody accountable for what they did. So if somebody committed a crime and you know they committed the crime and everything was right about the way in which they arrested and the trial, you want to make sure they're held accountable. They might spend a night in jail, they might spend the rest of their life in jail, but you want to make sure that they're held accountable. And the third is that you have to have integrity and make sure you're honest and open and follow the rules. A defense lawyer, their most important role is to try and make sure that the trial is done fairly, and if it's not conducted in a fair way, that they identify where the problems were and appeal. So if somebody is ultimately convicted, that they can appeal that case and have the right grounds to do it, that the Constitution was violated but for X, Y, and Z reason. The second most important thing is for them to try and get their client out of jail. Make the government reach its burden. Make the government prove beyond a reasonable doubt to all 12 people that this person in fact committed that crime. And the third is to be the guidance for that defendant, to help them through the process, to answer their questions. For example, should they take the stand in their trial? Make sure that they understand the benefits of going up and taking that stand, being a witness in their own case and telling the jury what they believe happened, or is it a benefit for them not to get up and take that stand and tell their story? Maybe that's a better course. Those are some of the roles of the prosecution and the defense. Civil liberties apply to everybody, and they're rooted in the Constitution. And for example, the very First Amendment is the right to freedom of religion, freedom of association, freedom of speech. A civil right would be when somebody's personal rights, for whatever reason, maybe it's the color of their skin, their religion, how much money they make, they're discriminated against. And when you have one group that's being discriminated against, or one person being discriminated against for those reasons, that's a civil rights violation. And we need to make sure that everybody's civil rights are protected so that we all have the same civil liberties, the general propositions that were set forth in the American Constitution that makes America what it is. Every one of the 50 states has their own state constitution, and usually it's a collection of the culture and the values of that particular state that may be different than the culture and values of a different state, north, south, east, west. And then there's the federal constitution, the one that we often think of, which is the one that was written by our founding fathers. And those are usually the same. They mirror each other in general, but not always. But one of them protects the other, and that's the federal one. The federal constitution protects all citizens wherever they might live in the United States, and also gives power to some of the state constitutions. I'll give you an example. when you get a driver's license, let's say you get a driver's license in the state of Maine, and that, there may be certain things in Maine that are required to get that license that may not be required in other states. But now you're going to go drive to Florida, and you get stopped in the great state of Maryland. And in Maryland, they say, wait, you don't have a Maryland license. We're going to put you in jail? No, they're not. You have a valid Maine license, and we're going to recognize that driver's license in another state like Maryland. And that's where the two merge.